I'm Henok Fentie of Omnipoyo, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest today is Sam Zermeño of Brewing in Portland, Oregon, and he is here for a conversation that goes beyond the brew house and into topics that matter to brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers alike. First, visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at allaboutbeer. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We'll get into the conversation in just a moment, but first, a quick message.
Whether the groundhog saw his shadow or not, this is the time to look at green teas for spring beer rollouts. First Tea's Hyson Green Tea provides a layer of green, vegetal sweetness and a keen roasty note that pops as a standalone addition or complement to tropical fruit. Contact First Tea at info@firsttea.com. That's FIRSDTEA for details and more great ideas. Attention brewers, registration for the 2024 Best of Craft Beer Awards is now open. Sign up today. Now in its 10th year, this is a BJCP sanctioned event, judged by fellow brewers, professional judges, and industry leaders. Judged in Oregon, it's the third largest professional brewing competition in North America, and it's a chance to have your hard work evaluated and rewarded. Use promo code ALLABOUTBEER to receive 10% off of your order. Don't delay. Register your beers today by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register. One more time, that's bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register.
Okay, let's get into it. A bit about my guest today. Sam Zermeño is the founder and head brewer of co-owner of Brewing based in Portland, Oregon. He was born in Tijuana, Mexico, and raised in Southern California. He's been brewing professionally since 2016 and started as an assistant brewer at Black Market Brewing in Temecula, California. He was also lead brewer at Great Notion for nearly 3 years, all during the pandemic. His last job was at Living House Beer, where he brewed for approximately 10 months before he decided to take the leap and open Brewing. Brewhouse has always been his passion project since its inception in 2014, and it wasn't until last year that he decided it was time to take it to the next level. He acquired an existing brewery in August of 2023 that went out of business, and the place was pretty much as turnkey can be. I was personally on site for the inaugural brew day, and watching Sam in his element was exhilarating, to say the least. The grand opening is scheduled for 2nd of March, 2024, and if you're anywhere in the area, you do not want to miss this. Welcome, Sam. I'm so happy to see you, and thank you for joining me for an hour of conversation.
Of course, dude. It's my pleasure. Like I said, it's always a good time talking to you, hanging out with you.
I can safely say I probably know more brewers than most. And honestly, when I was asked to pick of any brewer in the world to talk to, I chose you, man.
I feel honored, dude. That's awesome. I'm a huge fan of yours, so I've told you this before. It's an honor to be here talking to you right now.
Man. I mean, it's every so often you come into a person's world where you get kind of blown away by their energy. And I remember the first time I met you, you were at our brewery here in Stockholm at the church, and your energy was instant. It threw me back to a time when beer making and brewing and craft beer in general was kind of fun and explorative.
Yeah.
How do you keep that energy in a pretty challenging world? Maybe talk a little bit about kind of your background coming from contract brewing, but also kind of how you think of beer making, given that you haven't had a brewery before. Like, do you think? Yeah, basically, walk me through it. How do you keep that energy, man?
I feel like I've always had this energy since I was little, and it was definitely hard to keep that flame alive, right? Like especially during the pandemic. I feel like a lot of brewers lost that spark because I mean what we do is for the people, and when you can't see people, you're like, why am I doing this anymore? I was always hopeful that this shit would pass and that we'd eventually get back to it. And I mean, I've, I don't know. Hold on, let me think about this a little bit more. You can always edit this part out, right? um, yeah, so once pandemic was kind of fading off, I mean, if you will, I felt like it was time for people to kind of like step up again, you know, and bring the creativity back. And um, I felt like I was one of those people that could do that because I still had that energy, I still had that spark. I kept it alive during the pandemic somehow. And yeah, when I found brewing back in 2014, when I started home brewing, like the moment I started, it was just like a magical thing for me. Like I'd been looking for this thing my whole life. I tried everything like creatively that I possibly could. I tried to play music and bands. I was doing photography. I was filmmaking, like all kinds of shit. None of it felt super right. It was like fun. It was an expressive outlet to get my ideas out there. But when I found brewing, that was ultimately the thing that I was like, this is the thing that I've been looking for because I could apply everything that I liked artistically, like the visuals and the art that I like and the music to this one thing, which was like real witchcrafty. And I'm sitting there stirring the pot and I'm like, oh my God, dude, I'm like a little witch. This is amazing. Um, and yeah, I haven't let go of that yet. You know, I don't plan on letting go of that as long as I can. Um, Being creative is just something that came natural to me, I guess. Since I was a kid, I remember picking up instruments and learning how to play them on my own, learning how to draw and having little art exhibits in like elementary school and like being featured as like one of the top ones. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like this, I think creativity brings people joy. And ultimately that's what I'm doing with this beer thing now is trying to make people happy in some way, you know, because the world is a dark place.
Definitely, it definitely can be. And I know, and you know, when you came to the church again, like I kind of felt like I was thrown back into, you know, I traveled back 5 years or even 10 years, you know, to a time when it might have been, you know, partly because I started out as a contract brewer. Like I've always kind of attributed this naivete and kind of idea around risk taking as like a result of me coming into it as a contract brewer, you know, like being purely occupied with making people excited and not having to worry about like the brick and mortar kind of headaches that you now have to worry about and so do
Yeah,
I,
I know,
you
I
know?
know.
So it's a quite kind of a leading question, but like for me, it was like, okay, here's like it's an extremely competitive space, obviously. I mean, contract brewing is like it's a tough business in itself, but it's also kind of carefree and like a
Yeah,
cool
absolutely.
where you're doing it part time. But I mean, you started Brujos many years ago, and
Yeah.
it wasn't until when exactly where when you kind of made that full transition into making it a full-time job. Can you like kind of give
Yeah.
me time
Yeah,
perspective
I can
on
get
that?
into that. When I started homebrewing in 2014, I immediately wanted to give the project a name because I just felt it needed one. So I had like a list of, I don't know, 30, 40 names. None of them sounded right. So I just kept thinking about it. And then one day my dad was like watching my brother and I homebrew on our patio outside. And he's like, you guys, and he said it in Spanish. He's like, parecen brujitos haciendo toloache, which kind of translates to like, you look like little sorcerers, like mixing these magical potions. And
That's
when he
right.
said brujitos, I was like, brujitos, oh shit, like brujos, like that's fucking super cool. Oh my God, brujos, this is it. This is the name. And he was like, oh, cool. Yeah, I like it. So my plan was then, okay, so you got this name, apply it to this project, build a brand, and just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, practice, practice. So that by the time I ended up opening a brewery, if I ever did, I would have like this following from like way back, so that it wouldn't be something new to everyone. It would be like, we've been following Sam on this journey, like the people that have been, right? And it would be exciting for them to see it turn into like an actual location. Um, so yeah, Brewhost, I gave it the name. What was the, hold on. where was I going with this? Okay, so I got this far. You
What
asked
did
me
you
the
like? Yeah, basically, like, for me, it kind of feels like you did what I kind of wish I did, which was
yeah,
instead
yeah.
of starting to like drop beers to the public very early
Mm,
on, you did it like undercover, more or less, like cutting your teeth and
right.
coming out like guns blazing. I mean, like the epic launch, right? Like to me, at least, as a European with the European interface, was like East Coast tour, 8 state, Troon, Root and Branch, Fidens, Mortales, and then there's the Only Darkness, right? Winter, Living House, Great Notion, Horse. I mean, it's like basically like if I could like given what I know now, like how would I
Yeah,
have done my own launch? Like you kind of
right.
did that right off the bat. And I mean, that's to me that's remarkable, like the fact that you
Yeah,
like hatched this plan and had the patience to wait until you were like ready and you had the liquid, to back it.
yeah. So yeah, a lot of practice at home. The tour came at the time where I felt like I was ready to to do it, to launch it publicly. I think I'd already done a release or two via contract brewing out of Great Notion by then. So I've been able to offer these beers to these brewers that I met at Green City, the other half event in, I forget, it was 2021 maybe. Um, so I had already made the connections with these brewers and they were stoked on what I was talking about. And they were like, dude, we can't wait to see what you do with this project. So um, the tour idea came from my love of like bands and live shows.
So awesome.
And so I was like, why don't we just like, this is me sitting here with Ivan, like just shooting the shit. I'm having a bonfire at my house. And I was like, it'd be cool if we did like an East Coast tour with our favorite brewers from the East Coast right now and like print a band looking t-shirt with the dates and the names of the breweries and the locations on the back, like you would see it on a tour shirt. And so we went on that epic like 9-day journey through the East Coast. We flew out there and then we drove from like South Carolina all the way down to, or is it North Carolina where eighth state is?
Yeah, that's south, right? Yeah.
South. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we flew into there, got a car, brewed with Cameron, and then drove all the way to New Jersey, brewed with Troon. Those guys are awesome. We ended up driving from there to Long Island to brew with Root and Branch. Anthony had us over for a stout. Out of all the beers that we made, out of all the hazy IPAs that we made, he wanted to do a stout, so we did a stout. Um, from there, we drove up to Long Island. Or no, I mean not Long Island. Copiague. No. That's where that's where Root and Branch is. We drove to
Where's
Albany.
Sidens? Oh yeah.
Yeah, Albany. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
To brew with Fidens, and then by then we were pretty burnt out. I was like, man, this has been like quite the journey driving from all these states all the way up to Upper New York, and we ended up finishing the tour at Mortalis, and that was like the coolest shit ever. We were like, this is amazing. Like we pulled it off. Like we brought tour shirts with us, handed them out to people. We had some beer to hand out to people, and we made a lot of new friends and came back and we were like, we should do a West Coast one, but we kept the West Coast to just like California and Oregon. And we decided to do stouts for that one only with Horace and Great Notion, Living House, Moxa when Derek was at Moxa. And yeah, it was epic, dude. So yeah, the brand building part took a long time. When I finally decided to take it to where I'm at now, it was like shortly after I visited you, I believe, when we were talking, like you were like, maybe you shouldn't open a brewery, you should just keep this project as like a nomad project, right? And
That
I
was
was
my
really,
next question. That was my next
yeah,
question. It was like you were gonna open a brewery, man. Like when you were here, we
I
were
wasn't
talking
going
about
to,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
So
just
what
kind of fell on
happened?
my lap. And I decided it was like a sign that the universe was giving me, like, you need to do this, not just for myself, but for like the people that believe in it, that are going to be a part of the brand as well. Um, so I just went with my gut, and this place was perfect. I couldn't pass up the offer. Money wise, it was within my range, within my budget, and I ended up getting those two business partners that you met, Jesse and Scott, and those guys have been awesome, helping me build out a place that otherwise lived inside my head.
Yeah.
Like Scott wanted TVs, and I'm like, no, no TVs. Like this place needs to feel like a ritual space of sorts, and you can't have that with TVs distracting you. And he was like, okay, I get it. It's your vision. We're here to help you see it through. So um, yeah, it's been a long time in the making, man. I could talk about this for hours for sure.
I mean, which is exactly what we're here for. And I think that, to me, it was striking also the very like kind of focused approach around styles of beers that you were making. I think
Yeah,
myself included, when you start out, you kind of want to show the world that you can do all beer styles
of
at once.
course.
And I
Mhm.
know for a fact that you can, because I've had a bunch of beers of different styles that you've made, but you haven't kind of succumbed to that. Rather, you said, "Hey, I'm gonna do stuff that makes my crowd excited." I'm putting words in your mouth, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
my interpretation is that, at least, and I think that it's been very efficient in getting the brand out very quickly and getting people excited, like being focused.
Yeah, I've obviously focused on IPA more than anything, primarily hazy IPA, because back in what was it, like 2016, when they were kind of taking over the market in California, like Monkish was dropping the first hazies we'd seen on the West Coast. It was a super exciting time. I remember lining up, hanging out with people, making new friends. And trying those beers, just being like mind blown. I'd already been like trying the East Coast hazies, like the Alchemist and the whatever was out there. I could name a bunch of breweries, but um, that style of beer really got me excited because when I first tried like West Coast IPA, I thought they were too intense for me. I was more of a stout guy by then. Um, so hazy IPA was like a softer, a slightly sweeter, juicier interpretation of an IPA. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. The color, the appearance, the aromas, like everything about them was just like, it spoke to me. So I was like, I want to try to make these beers. So I started brewing them at home in like 2015 and just trying all kinds of things. Like I read as much as I could online. There wasn't a lot of information back then online about hazy IPA as there is now, but yeah, I just started trying all kinds of yeast strains and different grists and different adjuncts and different percentages of adjuncts. And I was like, this is the style of beer that I really want to focus on. I obviously want to brew all the beers, right? I want to make lagers and West Coast IPAs more and big stouts and whatnot. But to me, I'm still trying to perfect this hazy IPA thing. I don't think I'll ever feel like I perfected it, but as long as my palate is happy when I'm drinking these beers, I'm like, I think I'm doing all right. So yeah, I think
Phenomenal.
every brewer should kind of focus on one specific style real well, so that they're at least known for that. Like this person makes that style really fucking well, and yeah, and then take it from there. Like I love smoked beer. I've made some smoked beers, but I know that my audience isn't going to really come and line up for a Gratitskaya. Um, I hope that one day they do because I plan on making one here at some point. But yeah, hazy IPA has been my focus, and it will continue to be my focus for now, um, because I truly enjoy them. I truly seek them out more than any other style because I just want to see what everyone else is doing, and they're so different. Like you can tell the water profiles are different. Like you can tell when you find one that's super calcium chloride heavy, you're like, oh yeah, that hits the palate differently. Um, or when they're
I think
just
there's
like,
a strength, there's a real strength there. And, like for me, seeing you enter that new facility, or at least to you, new facility,
yeah,
and just like, grabbing it by the horns and like, starting to brew on that system. And then a couple of weeks later, seeing, people lining up for the beer. And,
it was wild, man.
I
It
even
was like,
got cans sent over, and I mean, the quality of the stuff is through the roof, and it's like your first batches of beer on that new system. I mean, that's the power of like specializing, but also like you really kind of like knowing where you want to take this style of beer.
yeah,
Can you walk us through like your reasoning around hazes and hoppy beers in general? I think a lot of, I mean, I've picked your brains a lot on that style, but if I was listening to this, I'd be curious to kind of hear how you reason around those.
Yeah, over the years, I've just realized that the ones that I really enjoy the most are the really dense looking ones that aren't really as dense once you go drink them. You know, they look like they'd be undrinkable, almost like custard. And I really love the appearance of them. I love the mouthfeel of them. And after brewing so many different versions of hazy IPA, I came to realize that was my favorite. So I started messing with my grists, going more like protein heavy on a lot of these hazies that I'm doing nowadays, like primarily wheat heavy, like blend of wheats. I really love torrefied wheat. I think it adds this really nice, like almost cereal like flavor to the hazy. Uh, I've cut back on oats significantly from when I first started making hazies. I felt like they were coming off a little astringent over the, like, after a while. Like fresh, they were just green from the heavy hop loads, but over time, like they'd get a little astringent. I don't know, maybe I'm just like being overcritical, but I found that using more wheat was yielding better results because they were more protein heavy, and like trying different methods with hopping in the kettle. Like sometimes I'd use some flex for a little bitterness because they tend to finish a little higher in final gravity, so they can be a little sweet sometimes. So if you can balance that out with a little bitterness, that helps. But I don't always do that. I tend to stick to like Whirlpool additions only, and they've only gotten bigger. Like I was like, 1 pound per barrel is fine. And then I'd be like, this beer didn't really like stand the test of time, so I need to up the hopping ratios. So now I'm at like 2 pounds per barrel nowadays in the Whirlpool, which I think is a better spot. I'll probably up that even further at some point, but yeah, as far as hops and grist, those are two things that I focus on a lot. I like the really pale hazy IPAs too. I'm not a big fan of the like the dark orange ones, even though like they can taste fine. They just don't look visibly as appealing to me than the bright yellow ones. So sticking with like a super low Lovibond Pilsner malt for like a portion of the base, which I've come to the point now where I'm using like maybe 30% of like Pilsner, and the rest is just made up of wheat and oats.
Yeah, my team was like pretty blown away by the grist that you wanted to brew over here.
Yeah, I remember all the rice hulls that you were throwing in there. I was like, oh shit.
Our German system was working overtime, you know.
Oh yeah. This system's really nice, man. The one I've got here, like I honestly don't use much rice hulls at all. The false bottom on it is amazing, and working with the mill and like finding the right crush is really important. Like you don't want to over crush your grain and shit and turn it into flour, but you definitely want to crush it well enough to get something out of it, especially wheat. Like you don't get a lot of extraction out of
Can I ask you, like, I mean, you know, I was there when you brewed these first beers, but I wasn't there to see the release, and I tried one of them, right? The collaboration we did, the 3x3, but that wasn't brewed at.
Oh no, that was the last one I got to brew out of Living House. So like, you know,
I actually haven't had any of the beers that came out, but I've seen rave reviews, obviously. And can I ask you, like, were you happy with them?
Yeah, I'm always happy with them if I release them. If I don't put them in cans, it's because I felt like it needed some tweaking. But
you do
ultimately,
realize the first beers coming out of that system. I mean, that's like pretty neat, right? Like,
yeah, the first two I did on this system, I was pretty stoked on. And then I did a couple more, and I had some little issues with channeling. And so I had to go back and like figure out how I was like running my rakes and hydrating and just all the little details that matter, right? Because I noticed like, oh shit, I'm having to use a little bit more added sugar to get to gravity. I shouldn't have to be doing that. What's going on here? Channeling. But I've been pretty happy with most of the beers I put in cans that I've put out in the world so far. I think, I don't know, I'm at like 15 beers now that I've released. The other ones that show up on the Untapped, I feel like are beers that I had back in the homebrew days.
Yeah.
Because you'll see they have like 30 check-ins or some shit from friends that I like just handed them to.
And it's like yeah, it's early days for sure, but I mean you're headed in a pretty amazing direction. I think
Yeah,
we
I'm
have a
trying.
short break coming up. We're going to take a short break for this message, and then we'll be right back for more of this conversation with Sam Zermeño.
Not all green teas are created equal, and using the wrong green tea in your brew can yield a dull, flat flavor. Enter First Tea's Hyson Green Tea with spring green tea character and soft sweetness. Find out more about Hyson Tea and other botanicals for beer by emailing info@firsttea.com. That's FIRSDTEA. Attention brewers, registration for the 2024 Best of Craft Beer Awards is now open. Sign up today. Now in its 10th year, this is a BJCP sanctioned event, judged by fellow brewers, professional judges, and industry leaders. Judged in Oregon, it's the third largest professional brewing competition in North America, and it's a chance to have your hard work evaluated and rewarded. Use promo code ALLABOUTBEER to receive 10% off of your order. Don't delay. Register your beers today by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register. One more time, that's bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register.
Welcome back. I'm having a conversation with Sam Zermeño at Brujos, Portland, Oregon. Okay, dude. You opened a brewery. You said you were going to do that.
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to be brewing now? I mean, we've talked about you focusing and like being kind of very mindful around, I'm assuming, what styles you brew based on what your crowd is going to like, but also the stuff that you like to drink. I mean, you like these beers and you're specializing in them on the one hand, but now you're about to open a tap room. And my question is, how do you relate to kind of the tap list that you will be having? What will the experience be for someone like me, a beer geek, walking into your bar?
You can expect like a wide array of hoppy styles of beers. Like I said, I don't just like hazy. I also like West Coast IPA now more than I used to back in the day, especially like the new iterations of like the more modern style West Coast IPAs. Someone like Shred is doing killer West Coast IPAs. Everywhere is doing killer West Coast IPAs. They're a little less bitter, um, a little more hop intense than like they used to be back in the day. I feel like back in the day they were more like malt forward and just super bitter. While I do respect the style, I'm not really a huge fan of that. So yeah, you can expect to see a lot of like hoppy styles of beers, West Coast, like more modern West Coast IPAs, some New Zealand Pilsners, um, hoppy lagers of any sort, but primarily hazy IPA. Um, and I tend to stick to like higher ABV hazy IPA. I do like a good 7.5% hazy, so we'll definitely have some like more sessionable ones, but I'm not a fan of like the anything lower really. I feel like a lot of the flavor that I like in the hazies that I like gets lost in the lower ABVs, or they just feel a little diluted and watered down. I'm just not a big fan of that.
Session IPAs, so.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not really. Maybe I'll stick to the sessionable stuff with the hoppy lagers, if you will, or like the West Coast IPAs. Uh, I
How
do
about
have.
dark beers? Are you gonna have
Yeah,
any dark
yeah,
beers?
for sure. I mean, we made that maiden batch here. You know, the maiden brew. Sitting in barrels now. I honestly think that if I'm going to be doing stouts, they will primarily be barrel aged, and obviously those won't be out for a while. I've got like 8 oak barrels full of barrel aged stout right now, 4 that I filled with our collab, and 4 that I filled on my own with a different base, just to see how different they could be. And tasting them the other day, I was like, oh, these are awesome. Like, I love what I can do with the one that we made, where I'm like, oh, we can hit this one with a bunch of different vanilla beans and some coconut or something. Whereas mine is a little sweeter. So I'm like, maybe I want to hit that one with a little coffee, something more roasty, some cocoa nibs, cacao nibs, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, definitely some stouts, probably like winter time this year. By then it'll be like over a year since we brewed that beer. And I do have a Helles lager in a tank that I made the other day after trying to brew a Pilsner and I couldn't get any sots on time. I decided to make the recipe change on the spot, and I had the right amount of malts and the right malts for the style. I ended up borrowing some Hallertau Middle Furrow from a Living House. And so we just ended up making like a pseudo decocted Helles lager, if you will.
Nice.
And so far, I'm really stoked on that. I feel like I might have that beer around more often than not, just because I do love a good Helles. And eventually, I'll brew the Pilsner too, because I also love a hoppy light lager.
And you've brewed a lot. I mean, when you were working at Living House, I'm assuming that's what you were brewing.
I mean, yeah, we were primarily brewing lager beer. I didn't write any single recipe there. That was all Matt and Conrad. Um, but it was interesting to see their process and learning from that, because coming from Great Notion, we brewed a lot of fun styles of beer, like sour beers like you do, and fruity beers, and like big pastry stouts and whatnot, ton of hazy IPAs. Um, so yeah, I've seen a lot of different processes. I've brewed on many different systems now. So coming into my own was really, really cool, because I saw it before I got to use it. And I was like, oh my God, dude, I could run this like with my eyes closed if I wanted to. It's that simple. The manifold is amazing. Like everything is in one place, so I don't have to run around anywhere. And I mean, slightly automated. So it's just a nice system. Perfect size for me. I think we have 6 fermenters, 4 15s, 2 30s.
Yeah.
I don't want to make a ton of beer just to make a ton of beer. I want to make beer that I want to drink or that I want to learn from, and that the audience that likes our beer is going to be excited about. Um, so yeah, we'll brew as often as we can, so long as it's needed. Um, and maybe I'll change my mind later when I need to pay the bills. But
No, but I think that's what's so fascinating, and kind of why the throwback for me was so apparent. It's like there's this like purity in why you're doing what you're doing that's not kind of muddled by and no offense to brewery owners, I'm one myself, but like the
mhm,
general idea of having kind of a brick and mortar brewery, the day to day, it kind of gets in the way of some of that
yeah,
enthusiasm and kind of clarity around why you're actually doing it. And I think it's, keep that around for as long as you can. One key, factor in your case is you've built a brand, like a
yeah.
really strong one. And I think like I'd like to hear you reason around kind of how you think about that. Like, what does the Brujos brand mean, and kind of how do you approach building that brand going forward as well? Like, is it all done through the liquid, or is it like, are you envisioning other stuff happening? I mean, now you're building a physical like space to
Mhm.
showcase the tap room. What the Brujos brand is like? How do you think about the brand, and like what does that mean to you?
The brand is everything to me, man. It's like an extension of me, if you will. Um, like all my little dark thoughts and the dark art that I like and what have you. Funny story, before I even started making beer, I feel like I was already selling merch with the logo on it just to raise money to be able to brew this beer that was expensive. It was an expensive hobby. So I was like, maybe I'll put some shirts together with some cool art that my friends were making and raise money that way so I can fund this project and buy myself some kettles and whatnot. So it did well. I was like, oh shit, like I've got a clothing brand almost versus like a brew brand. I could have taken it in that direction probably, but that wasn't fulfilling. So I was like, no, it has to be like both. So I'm like, let's build this brand. Let's work on these logos. If you've been following this whole time, you've noticed how the logos have been like finessed over the years, just like the beers have. Like practice makes better. I wouldn't say perfect, but um, yeah, Brujos. Not only is it everything to me, it's like in Spanish because I'm Hispanic, so I was really like dead set on the name being a word in Spanish, just to express my heritage and where I come from. And I grew up with like real what's the word? My parents believe in a lot of cool shit, man. A lot of weird, like superstitious shit. Growing up hearing my grandma and my mom talk about witchcraft and shit like it was real. I'm like, maybe it is. I don't know, but it was fascinating to me. My dad would tell me stories about aliens and shit and how he's seen some crazy stuff, and I was like, what? No way. So I was always I was raised that way, like to believe that there was more out there than what the naked eye could see. So Brujos just like encapsulates all of that shit, like all the stuff that I grew up listening to from my parents and like music. Like Thriller was one of the first songs I listened to that I thought was incredible. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like the video was incredible when it came out. Um, so I was like, yeah, let's build this brand. Let's get a following. Let's be patient. Let's learn. Let's just like shut the fuck up and listen. And if I feel like I still love this shit in 10 years, then I might just go for it.
Amazing,
So
man. I mean, it's, to me, it's like what I love about it is that you're charging it with, other things. And to be honest, like you had to brew good beer. Like if your beer would have sucked,
yeah,
it would have,
yeah,
yeah. I was like, I'm
like
so
cool, another
happy you're
brand.
brewing great
Yeah,
beer, like, but when you do that, like that's when the unique thing happens, where you have this brand that you've built over 10 years, and then like the liquid comes out, and it's amazing. And it just becomes like one plus one equals three
yeah,
way, and
for
that's
sure.
really amazing, and it requires a bit of I think you need to believe in other stuff that the naked eye can't see to kind of be, you're not nutty in any way, but you kind of are, it's
Yeah,
which is fantastic, and it makes
for
it
sure.
exciting. And I love the kind of the name of it, and how that also comes from a completely different place than a lot of craft beer has been to me, at least, kind of
Hmm.
working with this for 15 years. Like it's a pretty homogenous kind of vibe, like craft beer was, or beer just overall was a traditional kind of European thing that then kind of traveled the world, and the US has really kind of turned that upside down, and now it's coming back to Europe, where people that from all walks of life are kind of entering this industry, which is amazing. And it's really cool. It's really cool to see that you're kind of bringing your heritage into it.
Yeah, I felt it to be necessary, but I don't really like talk about it too much. I feel like if you know me, you know what I'm about, and you know what the brand is about, and I don't have to go telling you like this is what you should like or anything like that. I just if you like what I do and you like me, that's awesome, man. Like I probably like you too.
Okay, going forward, what do you I mean, you're obviously opening the tap room.
Mhm.
That's on the 2nd of March. Is that your aim, to open it on that
Yeah,
day?
we're absolutely opening on March 2nd, unless some catastrophic shit goes down. The tap room is almost done, dude. Like from when you were here last, it's a complete transformation. It's
Amazing.
got this like gothic church vibe, if you will. Like we scorched a bunch of wood to line the arches with, and like some of the closets for storage that we built are also made out of that. And then once we built those, we're like, oh, we can put more statues on top of those, like the statues you might have seen on my social
Yeah.
media,
Yeah.
or the sculptures. My buddy here in town made them for me because he's just an amazingly talented artist, and I knew he could make them, and he wasn't even sure if he could make them. He's like, I mean, I'll try. So he
Yeah.
made one. He's like, this needs work. I'm like, no, it's great. It's perfect. So he made a second one. He's like, this one's way better. I'm like, there you go. So he practiced, makes better. And then he's making a third one with like a hellhound and shit, and then a fourth one eventually. Once we decided no TVs were going up on in the tasting room, we were like, oh, we have room for more creative options versus television.
I support that decision.
Yeah. I don't get me wrong, I have nothing against TVs and sports and shit. I've actually been to a few sports games with my business partner, Scott, because he's a huge football fan and he's trying to convert me into a football fan. I'm like, don't get me wrong, like I'm not really a sports guy, but growing up, I was into basketball. I've been to a few live games with him, and the energy at the live games is something else. Like it's pretty magical to see, like just the audience just get rowdy and scream and shit. It's almost therapeutic for them. I feel like it's like this sort of catharsis. Like you're just letting go of all the shit you wanted to say and scream out loud in one place with all your friends, getting a couple beers in you and shit. It's pretty cool. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the tasting room's coming along. I can't wait for you to see it when you come back.
I mean,
I
I
hope.
will come back. I actually know when I will come back, and I'm thinking maybe we can drop our collaborative beer if it's ready then, and that will be next year or this year for hop selection. So
Yeah,
September, October, like
yeah. We I
whatever.
mean, my schedule is only booked as far as like April right now. Trying to keep it open, and I have recipes ready in case I need to fill a slot. But yeah, I definitely want to brew with you. I know you want to brew something hoppy with me because we've done it at your place a couple times now, and it would be cool to do it over here.
Very nice. What's what's the plan, like how do you plan going forward in terms of collaborations and stuff? Are a lot of people coming to your brewery now to brew, or are you going to be traveling anything?
I don't foresee myself traveling too much this year. I kind of want to focus on the space and like make sure it's running efficiently. And
Makes sense.
it's hard for me to leave, man. Like I'm here too often. Like I'm like just checking gravities and dumping yeast and all that shit, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like this is my second home. Um,
You literally spent the night at the brewery for an overnight boil with last time.
yeah, I've done that twice now. Because that bed that was here when we got the place, I was like, oh shit, this is perfect. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping that more people come to us now for the collaborations because we've gone to their places that I feel like it's only fair for them to be able to come to ours if they can make it. If not, we can always like chat over the phone or over the internet like we are now and put something together. Um, so collaborations, I mean, we've been getting a ton of people trying to get us to collaborate with them. And I always say like, I don't want to be a jerk or anything, but I prefer to brew with people that I look up to and that I personally know. I don't want to just like throw the brand out there everywhere. I'm like, if I know you, if we know you and like we like your beer and we think you're awesome, like we would love to make something with you. But yeah, I'm not gonna go collaborate with everyone that knocks on our door. I'm like, let's get to be friends first and foremost, and go from
Makes
there.
perfect sense. I mean, it makes perfect sense. The kind of the idea of you being there and being super hands-on, for the first months or even years
Mhm.
makes perfect sense. And I travel way less than compared to what I used to. So I totally
Yeah,
get where you're coming from. What's the, I mean, for anyone who can't get a hold of your beer, ergo everyone who doesn't live in Portland, Oregon, like, will there be any kegs or cans going anywhere else in the world, like for festivals or anything else?
yeah. We're definitely gonna be sending beer out to some festivals. We might actually be sending some beer to not might, but we are gonna be sending some beer to Norway, um, in March for
Oh,
like
yeah.
to a friend's bar. It's called Brugata. It's in Oslo, and he's trying to have it like a Brewhose night during the Inferno Festival that happens like at the end of March, which was one of the other reasons I was there when I went to
Yeah,
visit you. It's
I
Inferno
remember.
Fest 2023. I'm not gonna be able to make it this time, obviously, but I was like, yeah, I'd love to send you like, I don't know, 5 kegs of whatever I have available then, which we've already discussed. And we just acquired our license in Washington as well, so that we can do a little bit of self-distribution when we need to. So the Pacific Northwest will obviously see more brew hosts than any other part of the world, but uh, yeah, I mean, festivals, there's a bunch coming up this year. I think we're gonna send beer to Cameron for the eighth state Altered States Festival. Um, Angry Chairs having the Dark Embrace Invitational. We're gonna send beer there.
You're not going for that. You're not going to be on site for that, or the
Are
sending?
you
I will be. Yeah.
at the
I
Dark
wasn't there
Embrace
last year, but this year I'll go. Yeah.
for the Angry Chair?
Yeah, that's the plan anyway. I
Okay,
mean,
I might
now
go
I've
too
said
then.
it, you know,
If
like
you're
I would,
going, I might go too.
yeah.
I feel like I shouldn't because we open the weekend before that. But if my guys can hold down the fort while that happens, I can get away for 2 days
Yeah.
and do that because they're also trying to have like a brew host night where they feature a brewery they like or an up and coming brewery that they like, and I agreed to sending them like extra kegs for that reason.
I haven't
So
bought my tickets yet, but let me know if you're going. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
coming
it'll
at
be
a
fun,
pretty
man.
great it's
It'll
coming
be
at a pretty great effort to travel anywhere these days.
yeah,
I kind of feel like I just completed the 30 recipes like for beers and stuff without traveling anywhere, and it kind of feels
mhm.
like I need inspiration, you know, like
I know, dude.
gotta come hang
I
out with
feel that.
you.
I feel that way sometimes. You need to like go feed off your friends that carry
Yeah,
that energy, right? I always feel like every time you and I hang out, I'm like just hyped. I'm like, fuck, dude, this is so cool. Like someone I looked up to is now like a friend of mine and shit, you know?
dude. I mean, it means a lot. I mean, you again, your energy is it's electric, and I think you know I've heard you were in an accident at some point, and that kind of was a major event in your life. Like, can you give me some like perspective on what happened during that time? Do you think you kind of look at life
Yeah.
in a more
Um,
positive way after it, or yeah, what did it give you, kind of?
so the accident was just this freak accident. I was like really getting into fitness at the time. So I was like running fucking 5 miles a day, just trying to get my times up and my health up. And I was really looking into rock climbing. So I'm off on this trail with my wife and my kid. My wife's got my kid in this little like hiking backpack. And I find this like rock that I feel like I could climb. Just being a dumbass, I didn't have any equipment on me. I was like, oh, I could do it. So I did it. I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm going to try this other side of that same rock. I go up there, and as I'm coming down, like a piece of the rock breaks off that I'm putting most of my weight on. So I fell and landed on my feet. But when I landed on my feet, like I snapped multiple parts of both of my ankles. So I was like, oh shit, I can't walk. And she's like, are you shitting me? Like, what am I supposed to do? We're in the middle of the woods.
Oh shit.
So I was like, just go find a ranger somewhere and see if you can get help. I'll wait here. She was like, okay, I'll be back. And I was there for like an hour, just like contemplating the next moves. We had just purchased a home, and or no, actually we were saving up to purchase a home, and I was just kind of freaking out like, fuck, dude, I'm not gonna be able to work. Like I was a truck driver at the time, class A license, and I had just gotten that job, and I was like, well, I'm gonna get fired. I'm not gonna have money to save for the house. But I wanted to keep a positive outlook on the situation, and I was like, I'll find something out of this, out of this tragedy, something good will happen. So because of that accident, I started homebrewing in my wheelchair at home on a stovetop with like extract batches and shit like that. And I mean, that's what kept me sane throughout that time because I was starting to get a little depressed or whatever. I was like, damn it, dude, I can't do anything cool. Yeah, started brewing stovetop, fell in absolute love with it. I was like, this is the fucking coolest shit ever. Like I had read about it. One of my friends had been homebrewing, and that was kind of fascinating. But actually doing it was like just this magical thing that was sent from wherever. You know, it was like, here, try this out. I was like, oh shit! I made like a brown ale the first time,
Yeah.
and the brown ale was called like Hex Nut Brown Ale. So the word Hex was cool. I was like, oh, that's like real witchy, man. That's super cool. Before I had the brewhouse name.
Yeah.
And I bottled it in like these recycled stone bombers that I fucking cleaned thoroughly with like PBW and all this shit. And I filled them, and I can't imagine that beer was very good, but I thought it was cool that I made it. And I was like, oh shit, I cannot wait to stand up and be able to do this like on an all grain system. So the branding started. I started building the brand in a wheelchair. Going to TJ with my cousins and shit. And, like they were helping me out with some of the stuff, and my brother as well, my mom. We were going down to TJ to get shirts printed by a friend because he had his little shop in the middle of nowhere, and I was trying to support him. He was trying to support me. So yeah, it's
Do you
been
think
quite.
that event kind of gave you a different perspective on, what hardship is, and like that might, I mean, you've gone into a pretty tough industry these days, right? Like you're opening a
Yeah,
brewery when virtually no one's opening a brewery.
yeah. I feel like every brewery there's more breweries closing down than opening almost. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's accurate, but it feels like, man, a lot of people have taken a big hit, and I know a lot of it had to do with the pandemic. So yeah, we're in a tough industry. I know that opening a brewery is a huge risk, but one that I was more than willing to take because I believe in what I'm doing, like wholeheartedly. Like I'm like it's this or nothing for me. After this, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I'll get back into music or some shit. But um,
There's no
yeah,
after,
that
man. You're gonna
yeah, yeah. Honestly,
you're doing this.
I've envisioned this far since I started it. I was like, man, it's gonna be somewhere in the woods, like surrounded by trees. And sometimes when I drive up, I see all the trees in the surrounding area, and I'm like, holy shit, man! Like I've been a powerful dreamer and shit for a while. I
Yeah.
somehow manifested this shit. Um, so I'm gonna continue to do that. I'm still trying to see the future right now. I always live in the moment, but I like to think about where I'd like to take this, and that keeps me motivated.
Yeah, anything you want to share in terms of that? Like, I mean, it's I can understand again that you are living in the moment, maybe more now than even before, since I mean, you've made a pretty big bet on this thing and you're going into it. But if you kind of think of what Brujos is going to be, say, 3 to 5 years into the future, any kind of thoughts there at all, or is it like kind of now, now, now?
I think I would love to have a second tap room at some point so we can continue to supply our own beer to the public ourselves. And if we have the money, I would love for that tap room to be even more gothy and more dark, more elegant, if you will. This place is pretty cool. I think we've achieved that dark elegance, the gothic elegance that I kept mentioning to Scott and Jesse. It's almost got like a theater vibe to it. You walk in, someone recently walked in, the guys from Structures, and they're like, oh shit, this is like the Disneyland of like craft beer. Like adults are gonna love this theme park, dude. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool, man. um,
No.
so yeah, like a second tap room would be amazing. Maybe we'll end up getting an extra fermenter, like another 30, and kind of capping it there as far as I can see. Like I don't want my guys to feel overworked. I don't want them to fall out of love with this shit because they're very much in love with it, like I am, Maxwell and Ivan and other people that we have in mind. Um, so, and myself included, like I don't want to burn myself out to the point where it feels like I'm just doing it for money, because it's not all about that. It's like all the money we've raised has been put right back into that tasting room so it can look as cool as it can for the people and myself.
I love it.
So yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And I think, keep that energy. It struck me first time I met you, it's still
Yeah,
there.
man, we vibed pretty fucking awesome that weekend. I
Yeah,
still think
man.
about it all the time. Like Stockholm was beautiful, dude. Like walking around the city in the mornings and shit. It was super quiet. Hanging out with you was like, I know you were busy, but the moments where you weren't, I was like, this fucking guy is awesome. You and
You
Carl,
gotta come
man,
back. You gotta come back.
and Marie and everyone.
Once it's settled a little bit at the
Yeah,
brew.
yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely plan on coming back. I think I want to bring my wife next time because she was a little bit jealous. She was like, "Man, you got to go to Sweden to do what you love." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, that shit's crazy, right?" She's
Definitely
like,
bring
"Yeah,
your
yeah."
wife. near Canadian, come over for sure.
Yeah.
Well, cool, Sam. I know you're a busy guy, and I am deeply appreciative of the fact that you wanted to jump on this call with me and be on this podcast. Sam will be back on the next episode of this show as the host, having a conversation with a brewer of his choosing. That will be on the air in about 2 weeks. So make sure to tune in for that. I personally cannot wait to hear who he invites onto the show. Visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. I am Henok Fentie of Omnipollo. Thank you for listening to the Brewer to Brewer podcast.
This episode was sponsored by First Tea. First Tea invites you to explore the rich and versatile world of teas and botanicals, including Hyson green tea. Email info@firsttea.com, that's FIRSDTEA, for support in choosing the right tea and the optimal way to use them. Attention brewers, registration for the 2024 Best of Craft Beer Awards is now open. Sign up today. Now in its 10th year, this is a BJCP sanctioned event, judged by fellow brewers, professional judges, and industry leaders. Judged in Oregon, it's the third largest professional brewing competition in North America, and it's a chance to have your hard work evaluated and rewarded. Use promo code ALLABOUTBEER to receive 10% off of your order. Don't delay. Register your beers today by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register. One more time, that's bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register.